All right, lecture 12 looks at self-disclosure in relationships. So we are going to look a little bit at that today. Here's our quote. Sometimes it seems safer to hold it all in, where the only person who can judge is yourself. And I know I've felt this before and thought this in many circumstances, oftentimes depending upon the situation I'm in, and maybe you have as well. Now, we all know how difficult relationships can be. We also know how rewarding they can be. One of the areas of relationships that can be the most difficult and the most rewarding is the act of self-disclosure. Now, self-disclosure is absolutely defined as the process of deliberately revealing information about oneself that is significant and would not normally be known by others. So you're making a deliberate choice. This is the choice you make to disclose information rather than an accidental disclosure. In any given relationship, this can be the most difficult, yet in some cases the most rewarding practices we can perform. But how do you know what to say and when to say it? These are the questions that are at the heart of the reason why self-disclosure can be so challenging to a relationship. So let's look at a sort of funny example of the difference between no self-disclosure and too much self-disclosure. So if you've got YouTube open, go ahead and look up Liar Liar. And I know this is an old movie. It makes me feel like an old lady when I see the the air date of Liar Liar. But it is so applicable to what we just said. If you have seen this movie before, you understand clearly how self-disclosure can be quite a risk as well as very rewarding. So take a moment, look at these clips. You can just copy and paste them in or type them in on YouTube, or you can watch them on the text-based version of this lecture. Now that hopefully you are back, you can see that it is obvious that some regulation is needed when considering the act of self-disclosure in a relationship. Now, the first thing to consider is the type of disclosures we make in that relationship. So we know that self-disclosure can come in many forms, right? But we need to see some of the different types of disclosure in various relationships. Now, the type of information does determine when or even where it is appropriate to disclose. Now, some pieces of information are almost kind of common knowledge, and so are less potent and easy to discuss in most any circumstances, where other types of self-disclosure are buried a little bit deeper and are a bit more potent in nature. Now, one of the best illustrations of this idea was from that famous theologian, Shrek, and he just really gives a very clear-cut idea of how self-disclosure or categories about yourself can be various. They can be quite different. So let's look at how Shrek speaks about himself when he's talking to Donkey. Take a minute, look this up on YouTube or play it on the text-based version of this lecture and see how ogres are like onions. Alright, so now if you've seen this, you'll notice that yes, ogres are like onions, as are people, as are our self-disclosures. The most obvious and the easiest forms of self-disclosure are on the outside and not very hard to take, depending upon the relationship. So in the example Shrek gives, the layers on top are the very easiest to see, and with people it is absolutely that way. The stuff on the top, if you've ever peeled an onion, you know that the first couple of layers when you're peeling are real easy. They may even fall off when you cut the onion open. Once you start to get to the center layer, those are a little bit more difficult. Those are the pieces that are a little bit harder to pry out. They smell a bit more strongly, and they might even make you cry. So yes, ogres are like onions, self-disclosure, and people in general are like onions. The closer you get to the core, the more you peel away, the stronger the consequences are to revealing that information. So let's look at the various types of self-disclosure. And these come in all forms and can vary in their potency. So you start with your cliches, and cliches are virtually the opposite of self-disclosure. I mean, imagine if a person were to say to you, "Hey, how you doing?" How do you respond? "I'm fine." And maybe you are, maybe you're fine, but in most cases, you're not. In most cases, you're better than fine or worse than fine, or at least more descriptive than the word fine. So in some cases, it can even be a risky response. I'm fine. I mean, honestly, in that situation, they are not fine. There's a lot more to it. So cliches are sometimes the opposite of self-disclosure. But in some cases, they can be considered a very mild form of self-disclosure. Another type of disclosure is just pure facts. Not all facts qualify as self-disclosure, but depending upon the fact, and this can be very literal fact, it could be something as simple as I am female and I have blonde hair, to something as detailed as a political belief or a religious belief. So these are facts about you or facts about yourself that you're revealing. And disclosing that important information does suggest a level of trust. Now the next type is opinions. And opinions usually reveal a little bit more about a person than the facts do. They give a little bit more depth. They're a bit more potent. And every time you offer your opinion, you're giving a little bit more information about yourself and also increasing the risks of that revelation. So opinions kind of piggyback off the facts. You have this layer of facts. You have this revealing of information about you, and those all come to a combined total to help you to decide a little bit about how you feel about certain topics. So you can say, I am, in the facts category, you can say, I am Democrat, or I am Republican. But then when you get to the opinions category, that might reveal a little bit more about yourself, because just saying you're Democrat or just saying you're Republican doesn't really give a lot of detail. So the opinions that piggyback off those facts, they are a little bit more potent. And then finally you get to your feelings, and your feelings are definitely different from opinions. Oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, in some cases, feelings can even contradict opinions or facts. You feel a certain way, and sometimes you don't even quite know why you feel the way you do, and the facts don't really support the feelings. So you have to dig a little bit deeper to really find out why you're feeling the way you are. So they are different from opinions, although you'll see them kind of piggyback off each other quite a bit. And if you notice, the more personal information, if you're giving a lot of personal information that is in this category of feelings, so if you're revealing a lot about yourself and how you feel about certain things, it can be unappealing depending upon the relationship. Lack of revelation of feelings depending upon the relationship can be unappealing. If you are in a very, very close relationship and you choose to be inclusive with your feelings, or you choose to keep your feelings to yourself as opposed to revealing them to that partner, that can be unappealing as well. All right, now after looking at the various types of self-disclosure and seeing how some types of disclosure can be a bit risky to the relationship, why would anyone choose to self-disclose? Are there really any benefits to self-disclosure, really? And the answer to the question is yes, there are benefits to self-disclosure. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. Let's look at some of the basic benefits. And while you may know your own benefit, these kind of help to see why people might be revealing things to you when maybe you don't want them to. Maybe you are kind of hoping they'll stop talking. This might give you some indication as to why they're revealing that in the first place, and might even lead you to a direction to go in either stopping the self-disclosure or understanding that person a little bit more clearly. So a couple of reasons are catharsis. So sometimes we disclose information just to get it off our chests. We just need it out. To be perfectly honest, I find myself in this situation quite a bit. I have a natural comfort level with self-disclosure and with speaking in front of people. It's not something I've feared greatly. Now, it is something that does get me nervous, yes, but it's not something that I've feared a lot. So I feel a sense of catharsis when I reveal information that I have in my head to other people. Now, that being said, that catharsis only happens when the self-disclosure is the right amount at the right time. I don't go revealing all my personal thoughts to just anyone, but I do like to reveal everything to my husband. So there is a sense of catharsis there. Another reason people might feel a benefit to self-disclosure is reciprocity. So there's really no guarantee that your self-disclosure will be reciprocal. However, if it is not always going to be equal. So it does take time. So you might reveal something in hopes that somebody will reveal back, and maybe they do. And that's great. Then you get that feeling of reciprocity. Then again, maybe they won't. And that should be a signal to you. If you are not getting the similar amount or similar style of self-disclosure that back, so you reveal a whole lot of information and they're giving you nothing back. Or maybe you're giving them very little and they're giving you a ton of information. So if there's not that reciprocity, you know that's a signal there's something is not working right here. Next is self-clarification. So talking the problem out with others. Oftentimes, I was a bartender for 18 years, and this was something I saw regularly. And you've heard that stereotypical bartenders hear the life story of people. Well, in many cases, it's absolutely true. And you want someone to just hear you out and reply to what you're thinking so that you can either A, know you're not crazy, or B, just kind of bounce it off of a different perspective so that you can get some clarification on your thoughts. And some people just like to get it out in the open. Another one kind of similar to this is self-validation. So when you disclose information, you're looking for people to go, yeah, you're right. I absolutely get it. And this is a very important step in the coming out process. And when I say coming out, I don't mean revealing sexual orientation or religious beliefs. What I mean is your coming out of your shell, so your ability to reveal information about yourself and so connect with another person. So self-validation is something. You release this information and you want it validated back so that you can feel that connection with the person that you're speaking to. Another one is identity management. So revealing personal information to make ourselves more attractive. So a salesperson might say, well, I'll be honest with you, and reveal a little bit about how they feel about the product or their thoughts before they tested the product out. And that is a management of our identity. And this can be taken to a much more deep level than a salesperson speaking to someone else that they're selling a product to. Now, identity management, yes, self-disclosure helps you to manage your identity. It helps you to kind of see who you are and what other people think of you. Another is relationship maintenance. So your bonds can typically grow stronger when the honesty and depth of sharing between two people are at a higher level. I've noticed this when I have a relationship where I feel like there's a lack of closeness. Oftentimes it's because there's a lack of self-disclosure. So when the self-disclosure goes down, the feeling of closeness tends to back away and tends to be a little less. So bonds do absolutely statistically grow stronger when there is more and appropriate levels of self-disclosure. And then finally, social influence. So revealing personal information may increase your level of control over your social situation. So we offer information about ourselves to learn more about others and therefore give us a sense of either just ability to control our own situation or to control a circumstance. So you're asking questions and you're hoping to reveal information not only about yourself but get others to reveal as well. Kind of back up to that reciprocity so that you can kind of control the situation. And many people do this in debate. They do it in conversations where they're trying to work out an opinion based on a series of facts. So social influence is kind of a heavy factor in self-disclosure. And you see it a lot in political campaigns. I mean, they do this all the time. The purpose is social influence. This revealing of your ideas, your values, your facts, your opinions, your feelings on things is for social influence. So absolutely fits into that category. So there really are some strong benefits to self-disclosure, especially when both parties hold high regards for the relationship. Now, once a relationship is established and has begun to develop, there are opportunities to broaden and deepen reciprocal self-disclosure, which is ideal in a close interpersonal relationship. Now, we know that all things that have a right have a left. Okay, if they have a top, they have to have a bottom. And if they have an east, they must also have a west. So knowing this, we must assume that if there are benefits to self-disclosure, there are also risks. So let's look at some of those risks. First, you might find yourself experiencing rejection. Now, the fear of disapproval is really powerful, and there are some real dangers in revealing personal information. You have to assess that risk. How dangerous is this level of self-disclosure? Consider the reciprocity. Have I received at least somewhat similar forms of self-disclosure from this person? Or are we both at the level right below where I'm getting ready to reveal? If that's the case, then the risk is probably a little bit less, that I'm not likely to be rejected, but maybe I am. Many people that have had to come out to their friends and family about their sexual orientation or about their religious beliefs, they feel this fear. They're worried about rejection. Also, negative impression. Disclosure can lead to negative impressions. If you disclose something to a person, maybe a political belief, and they feel the opposite of you, there is a chance that could provide a negative impression on the part of that person. They may see you negatively. So there is that risk, and you have to determine whether that is something you are willing to risk or not. Another is a decrease in relational satisfaction. And there are some disclosures that can lead to hurt and frustration in a relationship. If you tell a friend that you just can't stand it when he or she does a certain thing, that might decrease the relational satisfaction between you two because it's out in the open now. That's not to say it shouldn't be done. That's just saying that that's a likelihood that could happen at that moment. So a decrease in relational satisfaction is a possibility. Not a guarantee, but it is a possibility. Another is loss of influence. Confessing a weakness may lead you or may lead someone to using it against you. It might lose your appeal in their eyes. Or they might literally do, as I said here, they might literally take it and blackmail you with it, or use it against you, or reveal it to someone else, and you're not desiring that information to go any further than between the two of you. So loss of influence on that person can be a factor, can be a risk. And another one is hurting the other person. So you reveal information that may hurt them. They may not either really want to know this information, or maybe the information is something that, say, for example, you see a friend's significant other cheating on them and you need to reveal that information to your best friend. That obviously would hurt that person. But is it the right thing to do? That's something you have to determine. So when determining whether or not to disclose a certain piece of information or to disclose to a certain person, we must ask ourselves some of these questions. And these are really great questions to consider. 1, do you have a moral obligation to disclose? If you have a moral obligation to disclose this information, meaning they are at a risk of being hurt or injured in some fashion. So if you have a moral obligation to disclose, weigh those benefits and those negative drawbacks. And if those benefits, and a lot of times you have to consider moral obligation as quite a heavy weighted benefit. You have to do this cost analysis and see if those benefits outweigh the costs. Are you obligated to disclose? Number 2, is the other person important to you? How important are they? And if they are highly valuable to you, does the benefit of disclosure outweigh the risk that could potentially come with it? So maybe the benefit, let's go back up here, maybe the benefit is identity management. And you really need for that person to know who you are and for you to kind of feel that connection with that person. If you don't do this, the relationship really isn't what it should be. Weigh that against the possibility of rejection or negative impression. What is that risk? What number do you assign to it? When you do that cost-benefit analysis, when you look at the social exchange of the rewards versus the costs, like we spoke about earlier, what outcome do you get? What number do you end up with? If it's a positive number, maybe it's worth revealing, especially if that person is important to you. Quickly, the other ones, number 3, are the amount and type of disclosures appropriate? And this is a great question to ask yourself in any communication circumstance. Is the amount of information I'm giving and the type of information I'm giving appropriate to this situation? Number 4, is the risk of disclosing reasonable? So is it a major risk, like it could ruin your marriage? Is that reasonable to the circumstance? Is it a major risk to your best friend if you don't reveal this information? So is the risk of disclosing reasonable? 5, is the disclosure relevant to the situation at hand? So is this a conversation you're just throwing out there randomly? Or have you planned it out and it is appropriate to this particular instance, to this situation? Number 6, will the effect be constructive? Will it dissolve or destroy a relationship that should not be dissolved or destroyed? Or will it do something to build you up? Is there a reason you are saying this to this person that will benefit you both in the end? Even if that means the relationship does dissolve. Maybe that's what's right. You have to consider, will the effect be constructive? Will it do what it should do? Next, is the disclosure clear and understandable? Are you 100% certain of what you're getting ready to say? Are you confident in your information, and not only in your information, but your ability to convey that information? And then finally, let's say you choose to disclose this information. Ask yourself, is this self-disclosure reciprocated? If not, if what you disclosed, or at least the type of information you disclosed, is withheld, the other person does not return the favor, does not disclose similar information, maybe it didn't go as well as you had hoped, and you have to consider what you're going to do from that point forward. I mean, if I reveal information to a parent or a sibling or a significant other, and I don't get anything in return, I'm going to evaluate that information based on the lack of self-disclosure I received back. And I have to determine where to go from there. Maybe I stop and I don't continue to disclose any further until we have a chance to get together and understand where we both stand on the issue. Maybe that person just needs a little bit of time. And that time could be a few minutes, or it could be a month or two, or maybe even more. It just depends on the severity of the self-disclosure. So this was a little bit of a long one this week, but it's really an important topic. It's something to consider, especially when you think about the differences between computer-mediated communication and face-to-face communication. I'm sure many of you have seen that people tend to be a little bit more revealing, a little bit more descriptive when they are communicating via social media as opposed to face-to-face. So it is something that you may want to consider asking yourself these series of questions. Hopefully you have a great week, and let me know if you have any questions.